The next paper will be presented by Dr. Bara, AlMakadma. It will talk about the practical resident-based teaching program and intervention in resident education. So I'm sure it will be an interesting subject. Bara, تفضل.
شكرا لكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. It's a pleasure to be able to stand here in front of you today to tell you about a major educational intervention that we have conducted as a project and then we set out to analyze. A group of residents thought that we are scientists and we are living 2018, we are tech savvy, and we are aware of our needs, which we feel that are not met in education. The practice of a profession is not the same as learning to practice the profession. One tells you this is a mouse, it's not the same as say use a mouse. The research in question is which approach is more efficient, a more practical approach versus the didactic approach. And then we were suddenly met with the hurdle of the fact that there are so many different kinds of practical approaches out there, some of which are old and many of which are ineffective. The objectives are to come up with a model that could be more efficient, interactive technology, to have an experience-based model, to evaluate this model, and then we're not trying to prove that this model is better, we're simply trying to know which tools work better and then move on from there. We genuinely feel that we indeed need to strive to be exemplary because it is time to change. Our ultimate aim is to create a safe and a confident doctor. And we're presenting to you specifically because you, my colleagues, are the ones that are suffering from the things that we believe are the challenges. The background, why do we need the change? What are the challenges? Well, in my hospital, I come from King Saud Medical City, and it's a service-intensive hospital. Many hospitals here are. And we have a lack of structured teaching, and when you're comparing to the best centers, there's a low consultant to resident time, and that means difficult to increase bedside teaching, the simple limitation of numbers. There's a redundancy in teaching method. As you grow to a more senior level, you find out that there's a slight lack of interest in repetition of the concepts because you need to accommodate the more junior doctors. There's a lack of advanced facility. We don't have simulation labs or voting systems or scantrons to perform real-time tests and smart boards, but we thought we could overcome all of that without a lot of overhead costs. And organizational cultural norms, that's a huge issue that we had to try to change, and so we had to communicate our results one by one and get feedback session by session, which we will explain in the methods. And finally, to try to meet the guidance and the objectives from the Saudi Commission booklets. And so you can see here we came up with a checklist that is being checked on a daily basis. And it's not free reign. We must be safe, must be practical. It's not come and discuss or create your own objectives such as problem-based learning. So what are we doing? Well, we make 8 cases. We made the cases from scratch. They're based on real patients that we saw, 2 of which were actually based on case reports. Each and every single number and or X-ray or ECG is from a real patient from that specific case with references. And each case is divided into parts and it's timed. The residents are divided into groups and they're asked to participate within the time limit and then give feedback to each other. And so you can see that then the cases progress from part 1 to part 2 to part 3. Each case has a specific applied and or simulated aspect, such as ACLS or Breaking Bad News or MCQs with relation to the latest evidence. So it's not just come and simulate. Please tell us what is your references and what are those evidence, which is something that we haven't been doing much in our hospital. Each case is announced before. We give the resident a chance to actually build their knowledge framework and background and long-term memory so they can come and be prepared. Each case has specific objectives and we're giving it out as a handout or as a process worksheet, which is also announced on the group, on the residents WhatsApp group in the form of a website that we created, which also has statistical tools inside to know how many people come in from different IP addresses and on what day, so they can see each case at their leisure with references and with sample answers to all the questions of the cases. The session has cases that follow the normal paradigm of history, physical examination, investigation to management, and then the answers with feedback, and usually there's a simulated order sheet. And it is supervised by a consultant and or specialist in the field. And then a survey was done with a scale from 1 to 10, 28 questions in total. The statistical method was to find out the demographics by gender, patient characteristics, and years of experience. We used the chi-square and officials exact test as appropriate, and we consider statistical significance as per p-value. SPSS 21.0 was used for this case. We found out total number of 40 residents completed the first survey, which we did, which was the intensive survey. That is not a feedback per session. That's 64% of the residents supposed to attend, at which time we close the survey. And then we have certain statistics by years of experience, and you can see that most of them had just finished internship. Most of them are males. The majority, 75% of them, responded that they were motivated to study more and that they have motivation, they have internal motivation. 58% reported that they believed the case presented were interested, and 63% would recommend such learning experience to their colleagues. 73% were aware of our project and what we were doing, and 73% of the respondents were also in preference to more interactive teaching. And as you can see, that there's more, the more experienced the residents are, the more able they are to create their own objectives and learning strategy, and so you find more interest in the more senior levels. But as groups had more seniors and juniors, there was a level of both integration and motivation. We took comments. Now, these comments can be used for future references and to modify, because this is a project, not just a research. And so we get this feedback. On the day, we decided not to announce the case a couple of times, and we found there's less interest and less visit to the website. This is the attendance over 2 years for our half-day releases. You can see the orange is people who did not attend. We corrected that for outside rotations, absences, post-call, pre-call, etc., which we have in our manuscript. These are the cases that we presented, and you can see 17th to 24th of October are the cases that were not announced, and yet people were encouraged to present because they knew there was a case on that day. Furthermore, in the future, we would like to assess more subjective and objective data, such as the attention span, which we started collecting to try to link that to the attendance increment and other subjective measures. In our half-day releases, we covered 32% of the emergency topics, 48% of the common topics, and 32% of the approach topics in the Saudi Commission booklet so far. This is an example of the feedback that we get, more data that we have and is given to consultants, and then they're giving feedback on separate grounds to the residents. To discuss this project, we will look at our approach, the designer's method, which are the people who made the project, feedback from trainees, and the objectives are our program director and the Saudi Commission, as well as literature review. And we found that the practical resident-based teaching, we believe, gives an interesting, friendly atmosphere. Those are the premises that we're going out from. And build up skills for best clinical practice. They build up confidence because there's a level of safety in this kind of approach. It's team, it's not individualized. It allows for a resident to personalize their learning experience by remembering the case and remembering the mistakes they did, and implement technology and online practice and place resident needs first, as opposed to place a certain curriculum first. And the needs are also, we keep in mind the fact that they need to pass exams and be safe and can meet needs. Unique set that shares concepts of PBL, TBL, technology, blended learning, and simulation. It's none of these. It's actually structured because we're timed and we have a consultant that's giving feedback. But we hope that we're taking the best out of these different aspects, And so what we already know is that PBL has always been viewed as a non-inferior.
You have 2 minutes, Bara.
Thank you, sir. And that TBL is shown as a resulting active resident engagement, and technology blended has, well, you can argue that it's more efficient. Notice that these are all subjective kind of data that we found in literature from 1981 to date, and we believe that this needs more quantification and study. Other similar programs in the postgraduate setting. So what we're talking about was mostly undergrad. We're in Chicago, Amsterdam, Birmingham, McMaster, so you can see there are less. And we found out, we discussed or touched upon the attention span and how by having different modules, you can actually increase it. In conclusion, there's always a room for improvement, and we should make use of advanced technology and availability, and teaching must be communication intensive, and that residents trying new ideas, especially the ones that include more involvement, interaction, and fun, if you will. We successfully implemented, or we hope that we have successfully implemented, practical resident-based to residency program to teach high-yield topics in internal medicine, in a large residency program where our own residents then can be stimulated to go and read and come back and discuss. Our recommendation is to establish easy to disseminate tools to assess knowledge outcome objectively, to come up with a policy recommendation, hopefully in line with the National Transformation Plan or even to the Saudi Commission. Surely we're giving the recommendation to our program director, and we want feedback because, as you can see, this is a rough kind of project and there's a myriad of data that we have to go through to try to refine. Time for your feedback. Thank you very much.
Thank you.